turnover at halfway. Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Clock at 10. Adams the off balance.
Oh, my goodness.
2 on the clock.
Welcome back to the Basketball Fix podcast. It is Beyond the Buzzer with myself, Ryan Tucker, Josh Higgins, the resident NBL expert, and Jeremy Dark, the technical whiz of this podcast. Boys, we're back.
Look, with my wires and everything hanging out.
We were just discussing off air before that Jez has actually figured out a camera. He knows how to sort his settings out in his camera. He just doesn't remember how to do it. So
Yeah.
the ability's there. It's just hidden very deep.
That's right. All the way down in my cockles.
Ooh. Josh, how are you this week, mate?
Very good, mate. Obviously, been an incredible week of NBL action, and yeah, we've been very, very busy at work, I guess, these last couple of days. So it's going to be exciting to say the least.
Yes, we have been very busy, and Jez, I'm going to just kind of throw to you first a little bit. We got a new set of podcasts coming out with the Basketball Fix, fan-driven, team-based podcast. What's going to happen with this, and who's involved, and what can our listeners and viewers expect?
Well, this is all backed by the same concept that we've had the whole time for the Basketball Fix. We want it to be a place for fans to be able to have their say. We want the fans to really drive what's going forward. We want to do all the boring stuff and get all the latest news and everything out, but we want the fans to be involved, and like we have with our fan zone, writing articles, and now this is the next step is having some fan-based podcasts. So Josh has already got the Perth Wildcats Wildcat Wrap up and running. We're doing some recording this week for the Tasmania Jack Jumpers with a couple of real characters that are jumping on board there. So look out for that one, because it's definitely going to be an absolute laugh. Don't know how in the zone they are, but it'll be a good listen anyway. But the whole point of it is to get fans more and more involved into the Basketball Fix, pretty much just be the driving force of what we're trying to do here on our website, on the podcast, on our socials. Because we've got a Sydney Kings podcast coming, we've got an Illawarra podcast in the mix already, and New Zealand and Brisbane as well. So it's absolutely firing. It's going to take off. And if there is anybody that wants to get involved, what did we say? There's the Adelaide, Cairns, Southeast Melbourne, and Melbourne United. That we're still just chasing the right people to come in and join the team and help us build this fan-based NBL empire that we're slowly but surely creating, we hope.
It is fantastic. Now, let's get into our big moments from round 12. And Josh, there is no bigger man and bigger moment than your boy, Bryce Cotton. How about you lead us into this?
I'll happily do the honours, mate. I just think we've got to give him the MVP trophy right now, mate. After another impressive game, I was sat there on Saturday afternoon at a family function. I said to everyone at the thing, I said, we've got to witness greatness one more time. I said, he's going to go off again. He's had 340 games in a row. He went again, 44, 3 rebounds and 6 assists. Now, he is the first player since 1991 and the first player since Andrew Gaze to have 40 points in 4 consecutive games as well. So he is in an absolute rare vein of form, and we are touching on all-time great performances and players of the NBL. And, I just think at this stage now we are witnessing greatness, and I think it's undeniably one of the top players, if not the top player in NBL history as well. And, from a Wildcats perspective as well, obviously he's helped them now advance to 10 wins and 8 losses. Now, they're in a very, very crossroady section of their season right now where they've still got another 3 games away before they come back home and obviously have a few more games and a nice sort of run of home games to finish the season. But, the form that this guy is in, I just think this team is as dominant of a force in the NBL. 128 points on the weekend against the struggling Cairns Taipans, I know. And obviously it took them a while to get into that game. But once they got into the game, they put on 30 to 39 points across the last 3 quarters in each individual quarter. So, this guy is the greatest player of the modern era, is the way we'll say it. And I think he's going to go down as the greatest player of all time when it's all said and done. But, we're witnessing history. And I think at the end of the day, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Let's just enjoy the present. And this has been an absolute, really fun time as a Perth Wildcats fan to watch Bryce do his thing.
Getting too far ahead of ourselves. Just last week, you were calling him the greatest player ever to walk
He still is.
planet Earth.
Yeah.
You reckon that's what he heard us all, or especially me, giving him shit that he wasn't as good as Gazy? Now he kind of put the shoes on and said, I'll show you boys.
I think there's a little bit of it there, mate. And I also think there's the lists that were floating around a few weeks ago, and we had him at 8 and Rucker had him at 4, I believe it was. And he would have been sitting back with his injury going, I'm better than this bloke, I'm better than that bloke, I'm the best player in this league, don't disrespect me. And he was the sleeping giant, I guess you could say, realistically, when he was away. And he came back and he's been on an absolute tear ever since. And I think this is the most complete Bryce Cotton that we've seen ever, and that's saying something because he's a 4-time MVP of the league, and he is at the peak of his powers. So it's truly exciting. We're going to see a 5-time MVP now, which is going to be up there now. I think Gazy had 7. I think we spoke about last week in 22 seasons. So Bryce is going at nearly 1 every 2 seasons now, saying that Gazy couldn't have done.
Jez, the MVP talk is very, very ripe right now, and especially because a number of other players have either missed time or had patches of poor form. How do you see Bryce Cotton in this mix?
Yeah, well, it depends how long this scoring streak holds, because he's obviously done it 4 times. If he goes on, and knocks out another 2 or 3 40-point games in a row, you could almost hand it over. It's going to take a big injury, I think, and he misses the season, or if something goes really sort of bad there at the Perth Wildcats and they miss the playoffs, then you might be looking at somebody else. If there's obviously going to be somebody else that performs, one guy sort of rings to my mind at the moment that might be sort of challenging him. But I think if Bryce straight away, if he scores another 2 or 3 40-point games, I think you may as well just pack your bags and go home, because he's definitely going to wrap up that MVP award. But I think one guy that has sort of thrown his name into the hat, also been a little bit bothered by these lists and things that are coming out, is Kendrick Davis. Obviously was the biggest shock, I think, in Derek Rucker's top 15, that he was outside of the top 10, even though he was at that time the leading scorer in the NBL before Bryce went on this absolute ball tear of a run. But he's also, since coming back from suspension, had some massive performances. Scored 30, 37, and 36 in his last 3 games. So they're not crazy numbers. It's only that Bryce has come out and done these 40-point games. Otherwise, everybody would be talking about Kendrick Davis. But he's also recorded 2 11-assist games and a 9-assist game, along with averaging 5.66 rebounds. So Kendrick Davis is really showing that he is an absolute all-round player and fits perfectly into the NBL, no matter what any crazy expert might want to say, because he's having an MVP season of himself. And if he holds this type of form, we're going to see the Adelaide 36ers return to the playoffs, be a challenger, can beat anybody on their day, obviously with Montrezl Harrell in there as well, causing an absolute storm. So, yeah, I think that's Cotton's biggest threat right now when we're talking MVP is definitely Kendrick Davis, because PJC's sort of fallen out of favour, I guess, with a 5-game losing streak by New Zealand. So, but yeah, Bryce Cotton, what a legend. Can't deny that he's definitely the front runner for MVP.
Most definitely so. A team that is not having the same luck or same form as Bryce Cotton is Melbourne United. Josh, their stock has dropped significantly since Chris Goulding got injured, essentially. Do you think his injury has had that much of an effect on the team, or was it just a coincidence that they have not been able to score points or defend since he went out?
Yeah, well, you break that into 2 sort of segments, I guess, there. So if you're talking on the defensive end, the loss of Chris Goulding is not going to sort of cause this, because he's not the world's greatest defender, and that's pretty simple to say. But, I just think it's been a lack of cohesion, realistically. And I actually think Marcus Lee's injury and time out of this team has really hurt them. Rob Lowe is really good and has been great on the offensive end this season. But, what they've missed from Marcus Lee in this short little run here where he's missed 2 of the 3 games they've lost is that sort of backup defensive pressure and, really strong inside presence, which I think they've missed. And I even think to a certain degree as well, it's the sort of rebounding statistics as well. Like Jack White has dropped off the face of the earth a little bit, especially last week. Like I don't think he even had achieved a double-double last week. And he's a guy who's, averaging over 10 rebounds a game and 14 points. So, realistically, I think there's going to be a lot more things that go on, and there could be a bit of a wrong they could be on the wrong side of everything over the next couple of weeks with their away run coming up as well. And we saw this last season. They sort of did struggle a little bit in this sort of period of the season. And I know I've got some heat for comments around that, but they struggled when they went away a little bit. Yes, their early season form when they were away was really good and they finished off the season away very well, but it was the middle patch that they struggled in a little bit. They had a few injuries, and they really did struggle as well. So it's going to be very interesting. But yeah, 3 on the trot is something they haven't done since 2023, which is incredible when you think about it. That's nearly 2 full seasons there where they haven't lost 3 games in a row. So that does show you how great this organisation is and this franchise has been for such a long period of time. And yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting. But they've given up over 105 points in all 3 of their losses. And also one of those games was 122 points to the Brisbane Bullets. So there's some major, major things going wrong. And I'm not sure if it's internal things or if it's just a lack of just composure and even just hunger as well. We see this with teams sometimes. They get to a certain point in the season, they're absolutely rolling, they're flying, they think they're too good for everyone else. And then they hit a bit of a wall and they see, we're actually right back with the pack now. So I think this is actually going to be good for Melbourne United in the long term. We're going to really see some focus, I guess, and some shifts in focus, I guess, from guys like Matthew Dellavedova, who I think's been too worried about the offensive end and playmaking and has taken a step back in his defense. Even guys like Jack White, like I mentioned over the last couple of weeks. Rob Lowe, yes, his offense has been good, but his defense has been poor. Tanner Krebs as well, when he comes on the court, takes a lot of bad and poor shots. So there's a lot of things going on, but it's a bit of a head scratcher, to be honest with you, because only about 4 weeks ago, I think we talked about them being the championship favourites by a country mile, and now they're well and truly right back into that sort of pack now, and I think they're sort of, a top 4 to 5 team right now.
Jez, all of the teams this season, probably except for the best team in Illawarra, they've had these form slumps where they've gone on a losing run or they've performed, under expectation. Melbourne United, even through this form slump, they've still defended the 3 ball quite well, but you see Matthew Dellavedova in the press conference after their most recent loss speaking about offensive rebounding and protecting the rim. They're struggling to protect these closer shots from their opposition. How do you kind of see that affecting Melbourne and maybe over the next couple of weeks with their opponents coming up?
Yeah, well, I think it's something that we flagged earlier in the season, saying that maybe their weakness was obviously this combination with Rob Lowe and Marcus Lee, and we weren't quite sure if it was going to work. And then we didn't really know what effect Jack White was going to have and how that was going to play offensively and defensively. But like Josh said, it feels like Jack White's dropped off a little bit, and I think that has hurt them. Plus, Marcus Lee isn't really there for what he can do offensively. It was all about his defense. So, while Rob Lowe has been extremely good, defensively it's hurting. And with Marcus Lee out and Jack White sort of not being that real physical presence, I think that we expected from him. He has had his moments where he's been absolutely dominant down low, and they're the games where you've really seen Melbourne control because they've got to. You got to worry about driving into the net. You got to worry about sort of throwing the ball up for the big guys and then working it because they know that if Jack White's got a little bit of space, he's going to be in there as well and help out defending. And that just hasn't really happened. And like you mentioned, obviously the 3 ball's been a big talking point of this season, but Melbourne are still ranked 3rd in defending the 3 ball, but they drop all the way down to 6 when it comes to straight out field goal percentage. So obviously a lot of these points are coming from 2-point range. And that's where they're really, really suffering. You see them lose more often than not. They're giving up too many points in the paint. I think over the weekend, they gave up 58 points to Illawarra in the paint and they gave up 54 to Southeast Melbourne. So teams are able to get in and get these high percentage shots against them. And Josh mentioned that they were averaging 103 points over these last 3 losses. But in opposition points. But actually, the last 8 games, they've averaged 101 opposition points. So they're having some major problems and then they're needing to play a game. I think that we're not used to saying that Melbourne need to play in these shootout games because they've always been a top 2 defensive team. It feels like when they've been their best and their most dominant. Melbourne United have been one of the best defensive teams in the comp, and they're just not like that. So Delhi's been a little bit off, like Josh said as well, because they've got to play more offense, because they've got to score points, because they're just leaking too much, and they're leaking too many high percentage chances and good looks to their opposition down low where they're scoring more points.
Yeah, and I think one thing as well, quickly, when we're touching on Melbourne's offense as well, is the fact that they're really starting to settle for some really poor three-point shots, which is not really a Dean Vickerman sort of style of coaching. And, I mentioned Tanner Krebs there earlier. I also mentioned guys like Ian Clark as well. They're trying to sort of fit into the mold of Chris Goulding and just trying to take horrible three-point shots sort of off a screen or off a touch quickly, essentially. So I think that's one thing that they've really got to hone in on. And even Jack White, for example, I think Jack White is best sort of in the mid-range to the low post and not the three-point shot. Yes, he can hit it, and it's really great that he has that sort of capability and that range. But at the end of the day, though, his best attributes are down low. So for him to be sitting at the three-point line and taking poor shots essentially over these last couple of games in these losses, I think it's a bit of a glaring thing that they've got to really address over the next couple of weeks. But like we spoke about with Perth a couple of weeks ago, they've got a big run away from home. And 9 times out of 10, this is where you see a team either get together and really have a good run, or they do sort of disintegrate a little bit as well and fall away from the pack. So really important next month coming up for Melbourne United.
Yeah, it's a bit scary, really, that they lost 3, not just 3 games in a row. They lost 3 games at John Cain Arena before they go on this big run away. So they're in a really vulnerable position if you think about how they played away from home this time of year last year, where I don't know, I can't remember exactly what it was, but I think they lost 7 of 10 or 7 of 11 games. So yeah, it's going to be really touch and go for them. But yeah, they've got to just start making better decisions and focus on their defense so they don't have to take these crazy 3-point shots that they're doing, because you're exactly right. They're just firing at will out there, but because they have to, because other teams are putting up such high scores and they need those points.
Jez, there's been some roster changes at the Tasmania Jack Jumpers. Craig Sword out, Ian Hummer in, and also we've seen the resurgence of Sean McDonald recently. Is this kind of now what Scott Roth sees the Tasmania Jack Jumpers as, heading into the second half of the season and a potential finals run?
Yeah, I'm still not getting too excited just yet, because I think we saw how much they struggled. And the positive, start with the positive first. Yeah, Sean McDonald has been incredible. I think he's really, really changed this team. We've touched on it a few times before, but you watch every game, even if his numbers don't skyrocket, he's in there, he's controlling it, he's that first guy on the ball. And then he's also the guy that they find, he mightn't score 20, 30 points a game, but he's scoring these clutch shots. And that's not just at the end of the game. He's the one that puts up the first sort of 2 threes in a game, or when they really need a score, when their opposition's going on a run, he's the one that comes in and finds that space or finds the person that's wide open to be able to break that run. So he's been incredible, and I think that's obviously what they missed at the start of the year, and it's really opened things up for Milton Doyle. We saw Jordan Crawford have probably his best game of the season. But we're also seeing sort of they're getting more points from their bench guys as well. And you're seeing maybe 4, 5, 6 guys score over double digits, which has helped. But on the other end of that, they've had a little bit of a good run with the schedule, in my opinion. They played Adelaide without Montrezl Harrell and Davis. They've had 2 games against New Zealand, who have been obviously struggling a lot on a 5-game win streak, with 2 of them being against Tassie. And then, they played Brisbane at home and snuck through with a win there. So they've also played, I think it was 3 of those 5 games that they've won have also been at home. So I think they just got a little bit of a kind part of the schedule with facing teams at sort of bad times for them and good times for the Jack Jumpers. So I'm not fully sold there yet. And then this whole Craig Sword, Ian Hummer situation is a real, I don't know, it's a bit of a brain scratcher. It felt like Jack Jumpers were getting settled. Craig Sword's still been very good defensively, not maybe producing offensively as much as everybody thought or wanted him to. And then they bring in Hummer, who is, it's definitely not like a direct replacement, because it feels like Hummer's a little bit more of a guy that's going to help out the whole Will Magnay situation more than be a clean replacement for Craig Sword. So it is something that they definitely needed and something that they should have maybe addressed earlier, because we were worried about the depth that they have at centre, and Magnay taking all those hits and struggling a little bit with injury. So maybe this can help a little bit, but I'm a little bit worried because you look at his history. I don't know too much about the guy, but all you can do is sort of stalk on the internet and see what you find. And since leaving Princeton, he's had a different team every single year for the past 10 years. So that's a little bit of a flag. Sometimes it's even been two teams in the same year. So I'm not 100% sold on it, but you never know till you get a guy in the colours and get them playing and see what it's going to, or how it's going to affect the makeup of the team. But yeah, hopefully it's good and it's hopefully what they need. But only time tells with these sorts of mid-season import exchanges, I think. So we can speculate as much as we want, but never really going to know until they get on the court.
Yeah, and Josh, as Jez alluded to there, it's not a like-for-like replacement. They've traded out defense for scoring, and it's something that they've really desperately needed throughout the first half of the season. But now you're seeing guys like Milton Doyle starting to catch fire. Sean McDonald is back and producing points. Crawford is picking up his game as well. Are we going to see, a team that were, quite good defensively now leak points and going to have to outshoot their opponents and rely on these other guys and the depth of their roster to be able to make up these points against teams like Illawarra or Southeast Melbourne that can put a lot of points on you?
Now, to be honest with you, I don't agree with that. I think realistically, Scott Roth runs a very tight system on the defensive end, and it all does come down to them buying into his structure. And I think that's the thing that we're all forgetting about is, I don't really think it matters who you've brought into your team or who you've got on your team. Scott Roth's going to find a way. And, I know they've won their last 5 games and the opposition haven't been that great, but the amount of respect and trust and, I guess, admiration I have for this particular coach is probably up there with any other coach in the NBL, because we've seen what he's done to a team of misfits in a state that is a misfit state, essentially, is what the rest of Australia thinks of them. And they've been to 2 grand finals, they've won 1, and they've been to a semi-final in their first 3 years. So Scott Roth is a masterclass coach. Yeah, that's what he is. Now, the thing that I don't agree with Ian Hummer, and I've seen it online a little bit, and when I did my research for the article which we released, I don't know where everyone's getting this thing about him being Will Magnay's backup. I don't get it. He's a 6'7" forward and he's not a 7-footer or a 6'10" guy. So he's coming in to be a scorer and add maybe some rebounding depth a little bit. But the way I more see him is he's going to be a guy who's sort of a mid-range to 3-point shooter for my liking, to be honest with you. And that's where I see his role coming in, and that's what the Tasmanian Jack Jumpers have been craving. So, I'm not sure where this like-for-like comparison has come. I think they're really set, to be honest with you, behind Will Magnay, and that does sound strange, but Majuk Deng has been really, really strong, I think, personally, for them off the bench. Fabian Krislovic has done his job. So I think he's going to come in and be somewhat of a good scorer. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be a knockdown shooter, but if Craig Sword is the sort of, mark or the pass grade, then he's going to be an upgrade on Craig Sword's scoring ability as well. But this team has been really, really good. I think the one thing I wanted to flag quickly is Jordan Crawford. I think his 24 points off the bench on the weekend has really eased some of the expectations or some of the pressures, I guess, off his shoulders as well. I think he's able to come in off the bench and be more of a offensive player and not more of a facilitator. That's more been Sean McDonald's role, and that's been really exciting, I guess, for obviously Jordan Crawford and Sean McDonald, because we've seen them both flourish in these new roles, and I love it. I just think it's a really good thing in the NBL that players do adapt very quickly to coming off the bench and they score really, really good points and score really heavily as well. So I think at the end of the day, they're really, really poised for a massive run in the finals. And, we're halfway through the season now. They've been at the absolute bottom of the bottom, and they're starting to really build now this season as well. So, yeah, you can't write a Tasmanian Jack Jumpers team off that is coached by Scott Roth at any point of any season.
All right, boys, let's take a quick break. We'll come back, and it's Josh's favourite segment. It is, of course, Guess Who? And Josh is back now. He's serving this one up on a platter for us this week. Maybe even Jez can get it. Josh, I'll hand over the reins.
Well, if Jez doesn't get this, I think we've officially got to start looking for a new co-host, to be honest with you. So Guess Who this week now? This is more of a bit of a teaser one and a bit more of a fun one as well, I think, because this guy is an absolute legend of the NBL. Now, I'm not currently an NBL player. I'm a legend of the NBL. I once scored 71 points in a game of basketball, and I will be appearing on the Basketball Fix podcast in the coming weeks. Jeremy, who am I?
Are you going first, Ryan, or what?
Well, I know who it is.
You couldn't have even searched up 71 points?
It's the highest scoring game of anyone ever in that.
I don't play this game anymore. I told you weeks ago. I thought that's why we took this segment off the last few weeks.
Jez is the kind of guy that if you're having like a dinner at home or something, it's like, oh, let's get a pack of cards or a board game out. Jez is the guy out the back smoking cigarettes and doing stuff. Like, he hates games. It's not his go.
Yeah, it's being a little brother and getting bullied all my life. So thanks for bringing that up, Ryan. Thanks a lot.
Let's leave the durry smoker at the back, Ryan, and release to the audience who the Guess Who answer is for this week, because it's an exciting one for sure.
It is, of course, Al Green.
Al Green is correct. So Al Green will be on the show in the coming weeks as well. So that's an absolutely really, really good episode coming up as well. So we've been in contact with him. Shout out to Al. He's just gone through a bit of a surgery as well. So currently recovering from that. And he'll be back on his feet very, very shortly and on the Basketball Fix podcast very shortly as well. So obviously the all-time points in a game record holder, 71 points. I think he also had a 54 or a 64-point game, if I'm being correct as well. So This guy was an absolute bucket back in the late 90s and the early 90s as well. So super excited to have him on the show.
Why are we talking about Bryce Cotton as the GOAT? When's he going to drop 71 points? Then we can start bringing
48-minute era. I'm not going to disrespect Al right now because he's coming on the show in the coming weeks. So let's just park the conversation there, Jeremy, and move on to the next segment.
All right.
Al can talk a bit of shit as well. It'll be interesting to get him on and hear him chat. All right, boys, let's get into the nitty-gritty of the championship favoritism. Now, if finals started tomorrow, who wins? Who's the favourite? There are a number of teams that could take this mantle. And we spoke a little bit just about 5 minutes ago on this show that teams have been going through some form dips throughout the season so far. And I think things go so quickly in this league. I think at every point of this season, people were high on Cairns, or they were low on Cairns, then they went on a 2 or 3 game win streak, and all of a sudden Cairns are going to be playing in the finals. Same with Brisbane, same with Adelaide, and then every team's been there. Sydney dropped out, Melbourne are out now, and Melbourne can't possibly win the finals because they've lost 3 games in a row. So, boys, I'll throw to you first, Josh. Who is your number one pick? If the final started tomorrow, who is the championship favourite?
Well, it's actually funny that when I was writing this today at work that I actually come up with these 3 teams because they're our 3 teams. But I nearly think they've been the most consistent and hot teams in the competition. But the clear favourite right now is the Illawarra Hawks. Like, I just think anyone who says anything different is batshit crazy, to be honest with you. But they've got 10 wins and 5 losses. They're really starting to flex their muscles now at this point of the season, and they're really establishing themselves on both ends of the court. And that's what's really been exciting, I think, to watch from an NBL fan and from a Basketball Fix perspective as well, is the fact that we're seeing guys like Tyler Harvey, Trey Kell, Sam Froling, who are probably more renowned offensive players, stepping it up on the defensive end as well. And the depth between the star players and the bench players, or the role players, for example, it's not as much as what some of these other teams are. So, like, I look at a guy, like Dave O'Hickey and Lockie Olbrich and even Hung Jung Lee. The difference between them and the starters of the Illawarra Hawks is not a lot, and that's what's really exciting because they're running about 7 or 8 deep currently, which is unheard of, to be honest with you, compared to other teams around the league. So I just think the way that they're playing, the defensive structures are really strong, the communication's really, really strong. You can see this team loves playing with one another. They love playing under Justin Tatum, and then the ball switches and it's on the offensive end, and they can shoot from deep. Like Tyler Harvey can shoot from logo range deep. Sam Froling was a dominant force on the weekend against Melbourne United, had about 20 and 10, I think it was, or 20 and 9 in that particular game. They've just got everything going on. So I'm loving this team, and I think they are the clear favourites right now.
Yeah, I agree. No sound wrong. Yeah, I think like you said, we've talked about it the whole time. Is their depth is just unmatchable. There's no team in the league that has the quality. Yeah, 8, even 9 deep, because you even think Darius Days is now starting off the bench. So you've got off their bench, the first bench 4 is Darius Days, Lee, Aldrich, and Dave O'Hickey. You're like, they could be the starters in any other team, or they could even be the starters in the Hawks, and you wouldn't sort of miss it. They can cover injury, which is what you need when it comes to long down the stretch. I think we're really going to see them absolutely shine when there's all these double game weeks being played, and then you start moving into, when you can realistically talk about them as coming into the semi-finals and the final series, when you're playing, 3 games every second day, 5 games every second day. They're all of a sudden got this depth, and they can find their rotations. If someone's off, they can replace them. And I think their success, I think you give them a clear favoritism if Sam Froling continues to play like he played on the weekend. Because if he can dominate there, that maybe was sort of the area where we're a little bit unsure at the start of the year. And if he can find some really, really good consistency and play the way that and dominate the way he did on the weekend, week in and week out, they're unbeatable.
I don't agree. I think they are very beatable. I think they get flustered when teams put a bit of pressure on them. They divulge into a one-out kind of offense where they're throwing up Hail Marys. We've spoken about it multiple times on this show throughout the whole season. When teams are putting that scoreboard pressure on them, they fall apart at the seams. And it doesn't matter how good your depth is if the team is not functioning as a team when the going gets tough. And we've seen it multiple times. They stop passing, they stop screening for each other, they stop moving around the court. And I just don't think that when it comes to a 2-game or 3-game or 5-game series, when the opposition coaching staff are going to be really knuckling down on these matchups and how to affect the other team, I don't believe Illawarra are there yet to adjust as a playing group as quickly as a Melbourne United or a Sydney Kings or even possibly a Tasmania Jack Jumpers. So we'll see.
Are you saying they're not championship favourites though?
No.
Because right now they're the championship favourites.
Not in my eyes. They're not. I wouldn't have them as favourites.
Who's your favourite?
Yeah. Sydney. Melbourne. Sorry, Melbourne.
You're not
Jesus.
Sure. You don't know.
It's not Illawarra.
Sit on the fence.
Mate, you change favourites like you change teams, buddy. First you're an Adelaide supporter, and now you're a Hawks supporter, and the Hawks should be the favourites, and they're your team, and now they're not. Bloody hell.
Well, I've never said they should be favourites, but I thought it was weird that Josh led into the segment with having our 3 teams, but I can't see Adelaide on the list here anywhere, so I don't know, Josh, what you... But the Tasmania Jack Jumpers are on this list. And, Jez, I want to throw to you on these ones. You spoke a little bit earlier in the program about not being too excited about the team just yet. But, they were there just a year ago. And they won and they beat probably the best team throughout the whole regular season in Melbourne. Why can't the Jack Jumpers win the title?
First, it's kind of funny that we're playing like... on the defensive side of our own team, saying that we're not quite sure. Is that, I don't know, it's nerves, or you just don't want to believe? I don't think Josh has that same problem, but at least for us, it's a bit, I don't know, it's a bit weird. But anyway, I don't know. All right. But I just think, look, I'm not saying that they shouldn't be in the conversation. I'm just saying that maybe I want to give it a couple more weeks. because I just want to see how they go through this stretch. They play Melbourne this week in Melbourne. It's going to be, I think that'll sort of define them a little bit. We'll see if they are at that level. They're playing against, Melbourne, who have been struggling. They should be able to put this one away. If they don't, then maybe my fears are valid. But yeah, they do have all the pieces, and like Josh ranted on, they've got the best coach arguably in the whole NBL in Scott Roth, and he can make things work. He's made it work since they came into the league. Like, they'll be there, but I'm not ready to call them favourites yet. That's all.
They currently sitting at, if we're going to bring in some odds here, they're at $12 on a global bookmaker right now. So they're fourth favourites behind Illawarra, Melbourne and Sydney. Now, if Illawarra can't win and Tasmania can't win, I guess there's only one team left. Josh, who is it?
Well, I think it's generally the Perth Wildcats that have got a serious chance. Now, the only thing that I definitely have my reservations about is the defensive end of the court. And I've spoken about this countless amount of times, to be honest with you. But the defensive end is what's going to sort of stop them and really, I guess, make life hard for them in a 3 to 5 game series. But what they're doing on the offensive end, we haven't really seen much of this, from any other team. And I know it's really been basis around Bryce Cotton and all his outstanding performances, but they're a genuine chance. And you've got to know as well that the fact that last season they had a very similar start to the season, went on a huge run, and were one game away from obviously knocking off the Jackies, who went on to win the championship. Now, I'm not saying whoever won the Perth versus Jackies series last year was going to win the championship by no stretch of my imagination, but they had a chance, and a genuine chance, in the first 2 games to knock off the Jackies and walk away with a sweep. And it was some late sort of game fadeaways in that second game, which really cost them. Sorry, in that first game, which really cost them at home. And, that really set up that series for the Jackies to walk away and go into another grand final. So I think they're a genuine chance. Like I said in a couple of episodes ago, if Bryce can just continue to score 25 points per game roughly, and this team really picks up. I think Keanu Pinder's got a massive sort of slab to pick up. Doolittle's going to be back in a couple of weeks, even though Todd Withers has been great. The team is really, really strong in terms of depth, and that's what we talk about with championship contenders. Obviously, the depth's really, really important because it only takes one role player or even good player to go out, and it can sometimes derail a team in the NBL. So if you've got 7 to 8 really solid players, it can really help you and really put you in good stead later on down the season. So, yeah, obviously some notable mentions, though. You've got to throw in the Sydney Kings. I think the defense has held them back a little bit, though, compared to other teams. And I don't think they've been scoring as well as some of these other teams as well. If you go back and look at their sort of average scores, it's around that sort of late 80s to early 90s. So when all these other teams are throwing up 110 to 120, they're not really scoring at a good rate. And they've got too many inconsistencies with their roster for me personally. Melbourne's obviously poor run of form over the last 3 games, and their 3 bad losses has been a bit of a dampener, but they're still in the conversation. They're just not being talked about like we have over the last couple of weeks. And Southeast Melbourne Phoenix are one team that are really starting to build, aren't in the top 3 right now, and I'm not saying that right now, but Josh King's got them going. They've got a really, really good roster. Sobey's been great. Walton's been good in that return. Matt Hurt's been good. So they're another team who is definitely in the mix for the top 3 as well.
Josh, you've put 6 teams here. Do you want to just get the other 4 out of it, get it done straight off the bat, so you get them all in there?
Nah, Perth's the clear favourite, I think, personally. But Perth's the clear favourite. So I'll get off the fence and I'll say Perth are the clear favourites.
All right, boys, let's take another quick break. We'll come back and revisit In the Gun. A fantastic segment. It is time for In the Gun, where we look at a bit ahead of myself there. In the Gun, where we are looking at who possibly is in the firing line. Josh, you first, mate. Who is in the gun for you?
Yeah, it's a bit of a tough one because we haven't done this for a few weeks now. I'd even say a few months, to be honest with you. So there's been a lot of chances for In the Gun, but I'm going to throw it down to the New Zealand Breakers front office. I think there's been some rumours swirling about them not being happy with coach Petteri Koponen, which I just find absurd. They went out and chased, obviously, Taco Fall after the shock departure of Freddie Gillespie. And ever since then, he's had to really adjust the game plan because they haven't been able to play play a fast play of game. Obviously with Taco, he's just a 7-foot center, a 7'6" center who's pretty immobilized and really can't do a lot. So they've had to really sort of slow the pace down. That's affected Parker Jackson Cartwright. It's affected Matt Mooney. It's affected the players, and that all comes from the front office. If you don't go out there and, like I wrote an article about, signing popularity and obviously trying to build engagement over trying to win a championship, I think this team would be in good stead still as well. So I'm not saying it's all on Taco for the fact that they've lost their last 5 games, but I think a massive burden of that will fall on Taco when the season does finish. So for this organisation to be having cracks at the head coach and throwing little subtle things out, I'm disappointed in, because this team, once again, like I said at the start of the season in their preseason sort of predictions and previews, they were on the absolute bones of everything last season and nearly forfeited their team due to money loss. And Coach Coppinen really got this team established and firing early on and really brought some belief as well. So, yeah, my in the gun is the New Zealand Breakers front office, boys.
But you can't really blame them, though. If that's the situation of the organisation, and with, as you can think about as well, they're the only team that went to the US early this season for the NBA preseason. They need this kind of circus is the wrong word. They need the eyes on them and the following to help their organisation. I think at this point in time in this team's progress of NBL, they don't need a championship. They need to just get people on board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but if you go and look at their attendance though, mate, just quickly, like they have got one of the worst attendances in the NBL because they haven't really got one home shot because they're trying to play all over New Zealand. So getting a guy like Taco Fall, yes, whilst it's great and people, will go and watch one game, once they go and see him play, it's like, oh, cool, that's ticked off. But if this team is finishing 8th to 10th again this season, then what's it really done for the organisation in terms of a money standpoint? Because if they're not competitive, it's not going to bring bums on seats and they're losing more money. So I don't know. I think I know what you're trying to get at, and I 100% agree. It's trying to bring eyes to the team and that sort of stuff as well. But once you see your team losing, you don't want to go again, especially if you're sort of a fringe supporter. The really passionate supporters will go every single week, win or draw, loss, whatever the case it is. But those people that you are talking about, the bums on seats people who come for the big moments, they won't be there come season's end.
Yeah, just quickly before we move off that, I think you see in sort of the fan pages and stuff like that, a lot of even the New Zealand fans, they want to just have one home ground. They want one home court. I think they got to build up that city first and make sure that they're getting anybody that's half interested in basketball at the games, buying tickets, buying merch, and building that up before they try and expand over the rest of New Zealand, because there's a lot of fans that were a little bit upset because, they can't go to the games because they're in other parts of New Zealand, and they're also upset because, they want their team to win, and the best way you win is also developing a really, really strong home court. So, and that's not really happening at the moment either. So I think definitely for the fans, they also want them to just be settled down and build around one specific home court.
Jez, another team that is in your gun this week is the Cairns Taipans. Their whole organization is on the brink of disaster, if you believe the forums.
Yeah, exactly. I float around all the forums quite a lot. I'm one of these forum floaters. But I think it's quite funny because the media isn't really talking about how poor Cairns have been this year. They're sitting at the bottom of the ladder. They've had 2 wins this year. They're getting pumped by everybody. They're able to sort of sit in games for maybe the first half, and then they just get absolutely run over in the end. And obviously something has to change up there. And all the chat and all the talk is, a lot of people want to start seeing them go private so they can get a bit more money into the organization. And maybe that's not a bad idea, because they're struggling. All the talk is all about how much of a smallest salaries they can pay. They can't compete with these big teams. It's going to take someone, they need this private money to come in, and someone that's passionate about the Taipans to throw a whole heap of cash at the project to try and build them up so they can start, recruiting some of these bigger names. And then there's also push now. Everybody loves Adam Ford up there usually, but there's starting to come a little bit of pushback now because of what's happened with the recruiting. There are a lot of people saying, yeah, well, he said that, he's been checking out these players for a long time, and then they come in and they don't do what they're expected to do. So there's either a problem in the scouting or there's a problem in the coaching, because he can't get out of the players what he's saying that they have in them. So there's some sort of breakdown there. They're either not as good as he thought they were, or they're unable to get the best out of them. So things are starting to unravel up there, and it's a bit of a shame. They're a great organisation, and they are going to have to make some changes if they're going to want to compete again, because now it's another season where they're sitting at the bottom of the ladder and really, really struggling.
Josh, let's talk about the Basketball Fix MVP to wrap up today's show. Who are the top 3 picks from round 12?
Yeah, well, this was a bit of a tough one, because I think the votes 1 and 2 could be up for, switching of whatever sort you want to do. But I've gone with the 1 vote, Kendrick Davis, 36 points, 5 rebounds, 9 assists, and 1 steal against the New Zealand Breakers. And the only reason I did that was the fact that the Breakers, compared to Melbourne United's competition, is a little bit skewed, to be honest with you. So those statistics, whilst they are great, second is just as good. So Nathan Sobey gets 2 votes. Probably the first or second time he features. He's been playing great. You got to give this guy his credit. I think we've seen a genuine shift in the player. I think which is awesome. So 22 points, 5 rebounds, 7 assists, 6 steals in a throwdown against Melbourne United. So that's where I give him a little bit of a tiebreaker win over Kendrick Davis. And then Bryce Cotton again with the 3 votes. So 44 points and 6 assists in a crushing win over the Cairns Taipans on their way to 128 points. So, it's going to be interesting. I'll tally up all the votes again, and we'll release them next week as well at round number 13. So it's going to be a very busy period for the Basketball Fix and the whole NBL world over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, very much so. And we have so much more coming up. Fan-driven podcasts, as you spoke about at the top of the show. Some fantastic content coming out from all of these guys that are now on board with the Basketball Fix, creating content. Don't forget to head over to thebasketballfix.com. Check out the Fan Zone, where you can create any type of content you want to and publish it to the world and engage in the basketball community over at the Basketball Fix. What else we got, boys? Social media. At the Basketball Fix podcast on Instagram, or the Basketball Fix on TikTok, Facebook. Where else
YouTube.
are we? YouTube.
Yep.
Lots of great
YouTube.
stuff. Hit us up
everywhere.
on all of those spots. Write us comments and send us your thoughts and support for the show. We love it. We love reading it and listening to it. Josh.
One more thing quickly as well before we head off. Now, if you've got an NBL podcast that you are currently doing as well, whether it's NBL, NBL1, WNBL, reach out to us as well, because we'd love to obviously help you guys get that podcast to the next level, and obviously leverage some of the resources that we do have and some of the knowledge in this space as well. So, like I said, check us out on Instagram. You can message us there as well, in the comments of YouTube, everything like that as well. We'd love to have that conversation with you in the very near future and start to form some partnerships as well.
Thanks today, boys. And as always, we hope you've gotten your basketball fix.
Turnover at halfway. Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Clock at 10. Adams the off balance.